Hello and welcome to the Bigger Boat Podcast. We're the movie podcast where we talk about Steven Spielberg's films and watch them one by one. And welcome to our Catch Me If You Can episode.
It's Captain Luke!
Sorry, what?
That is a reference, that's a line in there. I can't even remember why, but at some point Leo says it.
So you've chosen a very, very niche reference to start things off.
Yes, but there is a connection because his name is Luke and your name is Luke, so there we go.
Yes, that's true. At least you didn't start off with the knock-knock joke, I guess.
See, that's true.
So, as you've heard, my name's Luke, and you've already heard him. I'm joined, as always, today by a man who's trying to pass himself off as a competent podcaster. It's my friend Joey.
Hello.
Hello, hey, how are you?
I hope you can hear this.
How are you, mate?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Yeah?
Yeah. Today I went to see The Favourite.
Yes, I accuse you of going to the cinema without me. Can't believe it.
I know.
Who are these other people you're going to the cinema with?
My sister.
That's fine.
Yeah.
What? So you saw The Favourite?
Yes.
Yes.
I've been to cinema twice since the last time we recorded.
What?
Because I went to see Stan and Ollie as well, which was also very good.
Okay.
Some of Steve Coogan's best acting, I would say.
So, two films I very much want to see, but I haven't yet. Yeah. Which one do you want to talk about first? Tell me about Stan and Ollie to start off with.
Stan and Ollie I really enjoyed, and I thought, I did think, oh, I know it's going to, eventually make its way onto television, because it looks very warm and...
Sure.
Endearing, like us Brits do quite well.
Yeah.
And I thought, no, being I'm a real geek. I feel like we've never really talked about my silent comedy geekdom.
Yeah, Julia, I called you Julia for some strange reason. This is how long I've been doing it with you now.
Yeah.
Calling my wife's name. So, Joey is a very big fan of Harold Lloyd.
Particularly Charlie Chaplin. Buster Keaton.
I remember we went to see... what did we see
we went
at
to see
the cinema?
We went to see a Paul Merton evening in Hackney Empire.
Yes.
Because Paul Merton is a massive silent comedy fan as well.
Mm-hmm.
He tells us facts that, Charlie Chaplin had performed on the stage as a boy.
Yeah.
All of these kind of exciting things.
Yes.
And so they play a live accompaniment, don't they?
Yeah.
Mr. Neil Brand, I remember, because he watches the movies and then plays along.
It was really good.
It was really fun.
Yeah. Stan and Ollie is a biopic about Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy.
That's right.
Yeah.
I know we've just listed all of those other silent comedians, but I would probably say that Laurel and Hardy are my least personal favourite of the bunch.
Yeah, sure.
Because they actually had a very, very long career. They did quite well.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of silent comedians' career were absolutely over by the time sound came in.
Yes.
Even though, Buster Keaton actually had a really good voice, he could sing and stuff. Chaplin also could sing and had a really pleasant voice.
Okay.
I felt because this was out, and I thought I thought about trying to make a silent comedy myself before.
Yes.
I would hope that people would give it a chance and go and watch it.
Yeah.
So even though, like I've just said, Laurel and Hardy are not my personal favourite, someone took the time to make a film based on some silent movie stars, so I went.
Absolutely.
And it's really good.
And I hear
brilliant acting.
Because it's Steve Coogan, like you said, and John C. Reilly as the main protagonists.
And it's not actually about their film career. There's a very brief clip of them in their 30s heyday.
Yeah.
But it's mainly about this tour that they did of England, going all up and down the country, basically. Because
they didn't earn much money at all, did they? They didn't earn the living that their career justified.
Yes, that one might expect.
Yeah.
And it all comes down to ownership, essentially. Mm-hmm. Basically, Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy were employees, basically, of Hal Roach, the producer.
Yeah.
So they got paid a set fee for their day's work, or what have you. They're very well paid. Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy had a big bust-up with Hal Roach, their producer.
Yeah.
And it begins with Steve Coogan wanting more money, basically, because his contract ends, and Oliver Hardy's has got another year on it.
Yes, okay.
And so Hal Roach puts his foot down, and Ollie goes and makes a movie without Stan Laurel.
Okay.
And it's about that feud, because it's sort of it's only a minor thing, but it's a little bit it's a really interesting relationship, because...
It's like if you went to go off from Podcast Alone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right, I think that's enough about silent comedy. The Favourite is also very good.
Yeah.
Quite slow.
Yeah.
Doesn't quite have the building momentum that most films sort of do.
So again, if you haven't known, but this is the one that's quite favoured, I guess, in the Oscar race coming up.
Yeah.
It's a Yorgos Lanthimos film, who made The Lobster previously and Killing of a Sacred Deer, and it's got Olivia Colman as the British Queen Anne.
Yeah.
Set in the early 18th century, I think, with Rachel Weisz and Emma Stone. Is that right?
That's right.
Got it. Brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very unusual, but it's very good.
Is it funny?
It's quite funny.
Okay.
But in that kind of like eccentric way.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
There's some laugh out loud moments?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good. But you have some reservations about it?
Personally, yeah.
I think he has a very specific brand of filmmaking and a specific
and
sort of absurdist world that he inhabits, and you have to either get on board with it or some people it doesn't really work for.
And I feel like his absurdist humour worked better in The Lobster.
I love The Lobster. I thought it was hilarious. Yeah.
How about you? Have you seen a film this week?
I haven't. I've been on holiday. So I've just got back from a snowboarding holiday for a couple of days with my sister.
Cool.
Yeah, so that was a lot of fun. But there was no real internet there, and I didn't have a chance to watch a movie at all. I have started watching a TV show on Amazon called The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, which won a Golden Globe for the lead actor Rachel Brosnahan.
I've seen the trailer for it. Never seen the actual show.
It's pretty good actually. I think it's well worth your time. It's on Amazon Prime. It stars Rachel Brosnahan as the main character, Midge Maisel, who is a sort of an affluent Jewish lady living on the Upper West Side in New York. He's got the seemingly perfect life. It's set in sort of 1950s, in the 1950s. So it's that very sort of time where women's roles in society were very much confined to being one of two things, you know.
Yeah.
You are the wife and the cook, and, you know, you will be looked after.
Yeah.
So it's very that sort of Mad Men-esque. Through various circumstances in her personal life, she ends up getting on stage at a stand-up comedy gig and delivering an amazing stand-up comedy set, and finds she's got a real talent for it.
Cool.
That's all I'll really say. It is well worth watching, mainly for the bits with her and the person who ends up being a manager, played by Alex Borstein. The rest of the stuff with the family dynamic, the husband, I just don't really get on with the characters too much.
Right.
But whenever she's on screen, elevates it. She's brilliant.
Yeah. I know what else I was going to mention.
Yeah, go for it.
I have finally seen Annihilation, which was voted number 1 in your countdown of best films of 2018.
You hated it.
I didn't mind it.
What a review.
Yeah, I can't believe, in a way, that you put 3 Billboards at number 7 at number 1. At the end, because I hadn't really done much research before watching it, beyond the fact that you had enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And then the title came up, an Alex Garland film, and I was like, okay, that explains it.
Yeah.
I have a little bit of a problem with Alex Garland.
Do you?
There's always something missing in every piece of work that he's involved in
terms of like,
I cannot put my finger quite on what.
So
something about the exposition always seemed me a bit heavy-handed, something about the camera work being a bit clinical, and overall the whole thing is predictable, is my general assessment of Alex Garland's work.
Okay, fine. Did you feel that with Ex Machina?
Yes,
you did. Okay.
It's too clinical to be relatable.
I thought this was... Okay, I guess you could make the argument Ex Machina is quite prescriptive in what it's trying to say. It quite clearly sets it out. The end sequence of Annihilation was not clinical. It was artistic. It was...
I suppose
creative.
So. Yeah.
It was subject to a lot of different interpretations, and quite bold for him to go for some such sort of hard sci-fi that isn't really explained easily, and things aren't wrapped up as well as they should be. I guess you could argue that it's a bit pretentious.
It's pretentious in that I feel like it didn't quite hit the heights it was aiming for.
Okay.
It was trying to be Stanley Kubrick or something.
Yeah.
You know, like in 2001, where they go through whatever it is, like hyperspeed or whatever. Yeah. And you have all the colours and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it just felt like it was...
But I felt it was. It was trying to be, and it achieved it.
Really?
Yeah.
It was trying to be and fell short of it.
Okay.
In my opinion.
Fair enough. So about that other podcast that we're... So you heard it first. Don't listen to anything we say.
Yeah.
Fair enough. It's going to divide people, and it has divided people.
It is, yeah.
However, I loved it. I thought it was great. Right, what else has happened this week? We've had some news that Spielberg has cast as Maria.
Yes,
in West Side Story.
A 17-year-old unknown schoolgirl
called Rachel Zegler, I think her name is. So, who's never really acted before. Imagine being cast as a 17-year-old. Like having done, I think she'd done like a high school production of West Side Story, and then she moves on and does Steven Spielberg's version of West Side Story.
Wow.
Yeah. But That's very exciting.
It could have happened to me because I've been in West Side Story.
Who were you in West Side Story?
You won't believe who I played.
Maria.
Because I don't know if you've seen any pictures of me on Twitter. I'm quite tall and thin.
Okay.
I played Krupke.
Fat Eddie.
Krupke, who's the fat policeman.
Okay, did you?
And there's a whole song about him sort of being overweight and stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you have like a fat suit on, or?
No, I didn't. I just had like a thick policeman's outfit. Sort of like ironic. Suddenly the song became ironic. But
yeah. Okay, fair enough. All right, so like I said earlier, we're here to talk about Catch Me If You Can today. Is this a movie you've seen recently at all, or?
Yeah, fairly recently.
You saw it fairly recently?
Yeah,
okay.
I probably saw it maybe a year ago.
Okay.
Yeah, because I have it on DVD.
Fair enough.
Because I find it very enjoyable.
Yeah. I don't think I've seen it since it came out, which is quite a lot of these latest Spielberg movies. I saw them when they came out and not really revisited them. But I remember really enjoying it.
Yeah. And
it being a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to revisiting it again.
I think we both know, don't we, that Guillermo del Toro recently voted it the most underrated movie in the whole of cinema,
or something like that.
Something like that. It was some very bold statement.
Yeah. Is it underrated? I know it's considered it's always up there in some of his best movies.
Whenever you say, right, this week I'm recording Catch Me If You Can, you're like, oh, I love that film.
Yeah.
The trouble is, do you think people forget it's a Steven Spielberg movie?
Yeah, I've heard that for the people that I've told this week that we're recording this,
They're like, oh, I love that film. Oh, I didn't realise it was Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
Which is obviously a tonal thing. It obviously doesn't quite fit the mould of other Spielberg movies.
Well, it is different, but he's done different quite a lot in the last few. Like, if you look like the last 6 films or so, he's gone from Amistad to Saving Private Ryan to AI to Minority Report and now this. Like, it's very tonally different. The themes are similar, but it is a very different movie.
Yeah.
Shall we briefly summarise the plot? Just so if you haven't seen it,
yeah,
or you're going to watch along with us, it's not available that I can see on any of the major streaming services, so you might have to rent it or just crack out the old DVD or VCR. And it is a story about
it's a true story.
It's a true story based on the life of Frank Abagnale Jr., who is still alive today, actually. But he was one of the from the ages of like 15 to 19. He was a con man. Or con boy, who, I guess, looked a lot older in real life than his actual young years.
Yes, it's kind of ironic that Leonardo DiCaprio, the most boyish man ever committed to film.
Whereas if you actually look like a picture of Frank Abagnale Jr., he looks like there's a picture of him as a 16-year-old next to a stewardess, and he looks about 40.
Yeah, I've heard that.
You've seen,
I've heard it from him in some of the special features over the years.
I just don't understand.
And he said, basically the secret to my success was I always looked old. And then you go and cast Leonardo DiCaprio, who in Titanic always looks a good 10 years younger than Kate Winslet.
Yeah, absolutely.
It makes the whole thing feel a little bit odd. But anyway, sorry, we were summarising.
So anyway, he, from the ages 15 to 19, after the breakup of his family, runs away and manages to fraud checks or get into check fraud and ends up stealing in total about $4 million or so from fraudulent checks. Yeah. And it manages to impersonate successfully an airline pilot, a doctor,
a
teacher, and a lawyer, and ended up working as those professions at the age of 17.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. Before he eventually gets caught. And it's the story about his life and also the subsequent chase from the FBI, which is led by Tom Hanks's lead investigator.
Yeah. It's going to be quite funny if we watch this entire movie and you don't have a single piece of bad medicine about it, considering he's a fraudster.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I'll make a specific note. So I did read that one of the stories that sort of Spielberg tells is and one of the reasons why he may have even made this movie to start off with is the fact that he used to sneak and pretend to be someone else when he going onto the Universal studio lot when he was about 16 years old. So he'd dress up in a suit and and have a suitcase with him and an umbrella, and then walk in striding through the Universal lot and trying to convince the security guards he was working.
Yes, I heard he got off the tour bus.
Yeah, yes,
because there's a little bus with little carriages on.
Yeah,
I think we've both been on, haven't we?
I've not been to no.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah.
And apparently he got off and just went through sort of the nearest door.
Yeah,
and it was some editor who then put him in touch with a few other people. He then got a position in a post-production aspect of Universal.
Yeah.
And then his badge only lasted a week because basically it was a glorified sort of sightseeing visa, if you like.
Yeah.
And then it got to the point where the security guard got used to seeing him for a week, so they got to the point where he could just put his hand up, and that got him through the door. That's what I heard. It's very, very brazen.
It is very brazen. But apparently, so I've got in front of me one of the Spielberg biographies by Joseph McBride, and apparently that story ended up being debunked.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that he did get a job in Universal by one of the librarians as an unpaid clerical assistant, but he never actually did that. And it's one of those things where I don't know whether he was just, Spielberg's been telling this story just because it's a good story, and it's sort of, whether he's trying to con us himself, or that this is an interesting story about how I got in, a good anecdote.
I sort of print the legend,
Exactly.
It's actually got quite far removed from the reality. So.
Exactly, or he started just to believe it himself, because memory is fickle, isn't it? But apparently it's been debunked or so. So it's interesting that,
Because I do feel like I've heard Spielberg say it.
Yeah, no, he has, in multiple times.
Yeah.
Especially in the promotion for this story. This was the story, because obviously this is a story about a con man. He tells his own experience of pretending to be someone else.
Yeah.
But never happened, apparently. Have you ever pretended to be someone you're not to get in somewhere?
No, I pretended to be older than I was. I think the first...
I bet you have, you dirty dog.
I think the first 18 certificate film I ever saw was Gangs of New York, and I think I was 2 years younger, but it looked younger.
Yeah.
I was with my dad, and he just had an argument with the ticket collector.
Yeah.
He always gets us because he looks really young.
Well, I had that.
And then I just marched through, basically.
Have I told you that I had that on my 15th birthday? The fact that I went to see Swordfish, the John Travolta and Hugh Jackman film, on my 15th birthday, because I looked so young. Even though I had my ID and passport with me, the assistant wouldn't let me. The person at the door wouldn't let me through because she was just not convinced. She thought I'd faked it.
Wow.
So that's how young I looked. That even with actual photographic evidence, they're like, nope. Definitely not. It's a fake.
It's paying dividends now.
Yeah. Well, I moisturise. It's fine. So, shall we go watch the movie?
Yes, let's do it.
Yeah, excellent. Right, we'll see you shortly. Bye.
Bye. Right, we are back.
We are back. How was that for you?
Yeah, really good.
Yeah, I really liked it as well.
Yeah, I know we often say, Spielberg's films are getting quite long. And this is quite a long movie, but it's so light.
This breezed past so quickly, didn't it?
Yeah.
So I did not mind or feel the length of this at all. I'm going to suggest, disagree with me if you will, this is Spielberg's funniest movie.
Yes, it probably is, actually.
This made me laugh out loud much more than any other Spielberg film that I can remember. I
think I might agree with you. It wouldn't instantly spring to mind as an out-and-out comedy.
No.
But I think you might be right.
Yeah. I mean, he's not a comedy filmmaker.
No.
We've seen 1941. There's some really, really funny moments. Shall I, I've listed a few that really made me laugh out loud. So there's a bit where Hanratty is interviewing his mum and she's made some cake. And the other officer is clearly much more interested in the cake, and he's constantly trying to subtly just lean over and get the fork in order to have the cake. And it's just played so well and so subtly. And Tom Hanks ends up giving him the fork, but threatening him with the sharp end.
Yeah.
Really made me laugh. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. I've seen like a little clip where John Cleese was doing an audio commentary for A Fish Called Wonder.
Oh, yeah.
And he's talking about the moment where essentially it's a piece of exposition, because we know exactly what the information they need to give the mother.
Yeah.
And he'll talk about like distraction technique, essentially. And basically that's a distraction technique because Tom Hanks is just filling the mum in.
Yes.
As to sort of roughly why they need to look for young Frank.
So it's just a bit of exposition distracted by a funny moment.
Exactly. So you are taking...
I never even noticed that.
You are taking in this information, but it's distracted because, it's just so funny.
Yeah.
Your mind is with the officer trying to get the fork, right?
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I never even noticed it, thought of it like that.
Yeah.
That's a really good way of hiding exposition.
Yeah, it is.
And the other bit, like just when he eats the eclair in front of...
I'll figure it out eventually.
Yeah, exactly. And then just eats it passive-aggressively.
Yeah, in two goes.
Yeah. and then the other one that really made me laugh was the little line when Amy Adams has... Frank's revealed who he is to his fiancée, Amy Adams, and has gone, I'm not this, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not this, I'm not a Lutheran, I'm not a blah, blah, blah. And she's just had all this information. All she can say is, "You're not a Lutheran?" I I really laughed out loud laughing there. It's very, very funny.
Yeah. I've never really noticed that line as particularly funny, but yeah.
It's just really
it is, yeah.
And that's what I like about this film. It is a film filled of the little moments.
Yes.
It is just little moments here and there that really add to character and don't really get dwelled on too much, but they really add something to the film.
Yeah.
And there's loads of little moments you can pick out in lots of the film.
Yeah, and it's all very character driven, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, so the way he maneuvers his way around the fact that he's lied about being a Lutheran around the dinner table. Would you like to say grace?
Yeah.
Two little mice.
Yeah, exactly.
fell into a tub of cream.
Although, if you were asked to say grace, like I know you're not particularly religious, but you'd be able to make a good stab at it, right?
Yeah.
Who could who would honestly say that in a conversation? Do an anecdote about two little mice, and obviously know that's not the right thing to say.
Yeah.
There are a few bits that do annoy me in the film. Which
is that one of them?
Well,
no, because I love how the mum is like, oh, that little mouse churned it into butter.
Well, I don't know, but it's just obviously he's an incredibly clever individual, but he's also incredibly stupid. A number of times in what he reveals, the information to, he calls up the FBI every Christmas. He gives away information about his location. He's not, and I guess he is a child.
He's very young, isn't he?
He is very young.
Yeah.
But it's just stuff like that. It's like, well, obviously, I don't think you'd really do that. But I guess he would, because it is an unbelievable story, isn't it? But based in truth.
I loved it when, they pull out is it called the deadhead seat?
Oh, the jump seat.
The jump seat.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Are you my deadhead? That's right. Yeah. So this is referring to someone who catches a pilot who catches a lift on another commercial flight,
exactly,
right?
Yeah. Would you like a drink for takeoff? Milk?
Yeah. Exactly.
That's really good, because it reveals even though you think, fantastic, he has reached the heights of blagging, like, boy, what a responsibility.
Yeah.
Being a pilot.
Yeah.
And then he instantly goes back to being a little boy by asking for milk.
Yes. Yeah.
It reveals character, but in a really subtle way.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, because you've already just mentioned about he makes the phone calls every Christmas, and I feel like we should get this out of the way because it's quite important.
Yeah.
Is this a Christmas movie?
No, it's not a Christmas movie.
And yet Die Hard is, in your opinion?
Yeah, of course Die Hard is. Because, Die Hard is set exclusively at Christmas over one time period. This, however, and it makes direct reference... Well, I think Christmas is used as a device for family in this, and the absence of family, because obviously it is a time for gathering around with your loved ones, and it's to highlight the fact that he doesn't have those loved ones, and he sees Hanratty as a father figure.
Yeah, and we see the Christmas tree when he's spying on the mum with the new daughter. Right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So no, it's not a Christmas movie, because it's about the opposite of Christmas. So yeah,
I just thought I'd throw that one in.
I almost wrote that down because I was convinced you'd ask me about that. I think a good way to start it is just to start from the beginning. The intro sequence.
Yes.
So you can tell this is a different type of Spielberg movie just from the intro. It's like almost like Pink Panther-esque.
It is very Pink Panther.
Like title sequence.
I also wrote down quite French New Wave.
Yes, very much so.
The way a lot of the characters, like Hanratty, is dressed is kind of how a lot of... if you've been listening... following our podcast, we've mentioned the French New Wave a fair bit.
Yeah, I think in the Close Encounters episode,
exactly,
when we talk about Truffaut. Yeah,
and the tone of that music, and as I say, the way some of the characters are dressed is very French New Wave-esque.
Yeah.
On some level, looking back, people talk about the French New Wave in a sort of pretentious way. The truth is, most of them are really quite light-hearted and playful.
Yes, yeah.
And that's kind of the tone that this film
is, isn't it? So. And it has a very interesting John Williams score to it as well, like a really jazzy sort of...
Yes.
Something you wouldn't associate with John Williams at all.
It's unlike every other score that's ever been on a Spielberg movie, which I think a lot of people were excited when we mentioned that we were recording Catch Me If You Can. Yeah. Oh, I love that movie.
Yeah.
I forgot it was a Steven Spielberg movie, is usually the next line.
Yeah.
And I think the music might be part of that.
Absolutely.
It feels like a completely different tone.
It is. And it sort of stands alone, I think, in Spielberg's back catalogue. Yes. As being a sort of...
An anomaly.
An anomaly, absolutely. Although, we will get into this, the themes... My argument is this is Spielberg's most personal movie.
I might agree with you there.
Yeah. But we'll talk about this later. Let's go a little bit more. So, the intro, like I said, was like a bright and breezy sort of. You have these stick figure silhouettes, chaser being chased in a very sort of playful Pink Pantherish manner, and then it starts off with a game show, which is Leonardo DiCaprio on a game show in the 70s telling about his career. And this actually happened. I've seen the footage from the actual game show.
Oh, right.
Yeah, which is like something about Tell the Truth. It's like a 70s American version of Would I Lie to You or something like that.
Yeah.
In which he is a special guest and has to answer everything honestly. And he has to be picked out of a lineup.
Yeah.
And that actually happened. We'll post a link to the actual Frank Abagnale Jr. being on this game show, having to answer questions about how he impersonated a doctor, a lawyer, and all those things. It's an interesting way to start a movie, because it just says this is something different. This is a breezy, fun caper. And then it sort of does a flash forward, and you see Leonardo DiCaprio in a French prison, don't you? You
do, yes.
Yeah.
Looking very Man in the Iron Mask.
He does, yeah. I was thinking like Jean Valjean from Les Miserables.
Yeah. But I was suddenly just looking at him, and I suddenly thought, am I watching Man in the Iron Mask?
Yeah.
Where's his twin?
And then it goes back, and then you see the start. And Leonardo DiCaprio is meant to be sort of de-aged a little bit by having floppy hair.
Yes.
And you see how his career started, and it just takes you through it sort of chronologically from then until his point.
More or less, but I did make the point that, because we've mentioned before, Spielberg is not really one for jumping around in time.
No, he's not.
He does. There is a sequence in Amistad, wasn't there, where you saw the main character's sort of slavery backstory in the middle of the movie. But this does jump back and forth, and it's very clear in as much that it gives you the dates and the locations that they are. But it does go back and forth between extraditing him from France to America, doesn't it? You see him in the hotel rooms with handcuffs on, talking to Hanratty.
Yes. And then it sort of moves forward, and you see his story going forward from there.
Yes, so it begins with him being slightly bullied on the first day of high school.
Yeah.
And then...
Quite rightly so. He goes in his old school blazer.
Yes.
Which doesn't really strike me as someone who's going to have the confidence to do what he does next.
That's true.
It's sort of the...
it doesn't make one very approachable.
No, it's sort of that's the thing one of the nerdy kids would do. But I was that nerdy kid on their first day of school.
Yeah.
And then he has the audacity to, after being sort of bullied and shoved in the playground, to pretend he's the substitute French teacher.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd love to have had the balls to do that.
Yeah.
I would not have looked old enough, but imagine. That's another one of the really funny bits in it, when he ends up in the parents end up in the headmaster's office, and they said he even arranged a day trip to a French bread factory in Trenton.
Yeah. And then I love the reaction when they come out of the office, and the dad, who's played by Christopher Walken, and Leonardo DiCaprio, they both look at each other and then just giggle.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
It is a really nice scene, isn't it?
So apparently the real Frank Abagnale, how he did that, or his main sort of plan, if you like, how to outwit the other students, was he just read the book that they were studying a chapter ahead, because he knew they wouldn't.
Yeah.
It was as simple as that.
Yeah. That is very clever.
And then do you remember there's that, while he's waiting on the outside of the office as his parents are being told about what he's been doing as a fake substitute teacher, you start to see the cleverness and the nuances of his deception when he talks to the young girl.
About the sick note.
Yeah. She says it's a fake, right? Because you haven't got the crease.
Yeah.
First thing you do when your mum hands you a note is fold it and put it in your pocket.
Yeah.
Where's the crease?
Where was he learning all this stuff?
I don't know.
Have you read the real guy's book? The real Frank Abagnale's book?
I haven't. I've read his Wikipedia profile.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah.
And apparently his first deception was on his dad.
Okay.
So apparently his dad had some kind of coupons for gas, or petrol, as we call it in England, for his car.
Yeah.
And I think it was I think it worked a bit like a credit card or something like that. I don't think there was actual monetary value on it, as in like you used it and then you paid your bill later.
Okay.
So he said he was going to use it for gas. Instead, he used this gas card for actual auto parts.
Okay.
Sold those, and thus you have actual cash.
Okay.
So then he took girls on dates, and he racked up a bill of $3,400 that his dad then had to pay.
Really?
Yeah.
And we wonder in this film why his dad had a problem with the tax man.
Yeah.
So he sort of, it seems that it's all his fault.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Because we had $3,400 back in that day.
In the 60s, yeah.
That's a lot of money.
It is.
Wow.
He's done that a lot.
What is he doing on dates?
Yeah, I don't know. Living the high life.
Maybe he's paying for dates.
Perfectly possible, because he pays Jennifer Gardner.
Yeah, I completely forgot Jennifer Garner was in this as a cameo. It's essentially a cameo, isn't it? For someone who
it is,
probably would have been quite a big star around the time 2002. This was around the time of Alias, wasn't it?
Yes.
So, yeah.
And apparently Spielberg saw her in Alias. And
right, is that right? Okay.
She'd be perfect for that small
for
role.
that hooker. That's another little moment that I really liked in it. When Frank Abagnale's walking past Jennifer Garner, and you only see their feet. And all you see is Jennifer Garner's feet just move slightly towards him.
Yes.
And that tells you so much. And it's just a really nice shot. Yeah. It's those little moments that I really like.
Yeah. Tarantino does those sort of things a lot.
He does.
He's
in a weirder way.
Yeah. Yeah, what I really love, I remember loving this little moment in the cinema as well, is when Jennifer Garner says, like, if I was in the shop, how much would you pay for me?
Yeah.
And it keeps building and building, and it's like, oh, but I only have a check for $1,400 and we agreed on $1,000.
Yeah.
She said, well, how about you give me the check and I'll give you back $400. Even better. I love those sort of little...
Worked out really well.
Yeah.
I mean, he's living the ultimate 60s male dream, isn't he?
Yeah. I think that's what makes the whole thing so sort of enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
It's clearly a bit ridiculous.
If you're a man.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. Which I happen to be, so... quid's in. 400 quid.
The world's looking up. So we know Frank ends up being good at this, and he ends up... Everything escalates and escalates. He ends up impersonating a pilot, a doctor, a lawyer, and all that jazz.
Yeah.
What do you think sort of drives him to do what he does?
Obviously, a big feature of this story is the fact that his parents divorce.
Yeah.
And it's the moment where he is forced to choose one parent or the other to live with.
Yes.
That sends him off the rails, and he runs out of the apartment. It's that he really struggles with. So it's the sense of wanting a family, isn't it, I think? And so I think maybe the sense of like wanting money and making yourself established is always, to some extent, it's so that you can raise a family well.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And there's, exactly.
And then on some level, it then also just becomes a very simple trying to find pleasure in materialistic things, because he's clearly lacking happiness in the actual emotional day-to-day people interactions. I think. Yeah.
And I think one of the main themes of this is the fact that this is a movie about the traditional American dream, isn't it?
Yeah, gone slightly awry,
but it's about that, come to America, you can have this sort of life, you can have this money, you can do this for yourself. And he's trying to attain that sort of that family that he'd always wanted, that he's always trying to bring his parents back together, isn't he? He's trying to make himself comfortable. Yeah.
Interestingly, do you think perhaps he's sort of like, he's very much sort of bought into the image that the American dream can facilitate.
Yeah,
being a Pan Am pilot, Pan Am were very good at their marketing, and it's a very sort of, if you look at like the faces of the pilots of Pan Am, they're very sort of all-American boys.
Yes, exactly.
Sort of very blonde, sort of attractive women around, and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's buying into the image. And that's what he's very aware of, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Because he's even given that piece of advice really early on, isn't he, by his dad? Why do the Yankees always win?
Yes.
They can't take their eyes off the pinstripes.
Yeah. And I think what drives it, like you said, what drives him is, and also to sort of reconcile that relationship with his father. He's a boy who wants to make his dad proud, isn't he?
Yeah.
Ultimately. And his dad's not really helping by sort of encouraging him in order to do that. And then by the end, when he realised that this dream, he's never going to achieve that sort of what he wants.
Yeah.
He wants to stop, but that's all he knows now. And he even asks his dad, please ask me to stop. But his dad won't, because his dad is sort of proud of him, I think.
Yeah.
And the fact that he has made him so much money, and he's now become the opposite of him.
Yeah. This is a whole theme that we are going to eventually talk upon, but we're actually going through the actual story more right now.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is the first time that we've had we've had a genuinely good dad in this film.
Really?
A good father.
Really?
In that he really cares for his son. To some extent, he sort of like gives Frank the idea of what a sort of the image of a perfect relationship sort of looks like. The way he sort of reacts with his mother and the dancing and telling stories about this is how I met her at this dance and all this kind of stuff.
I don't know, that felt a little bit Oedipal to me. That whole, like, the way he was dancing with her and then staring directly out at his son in an almost threatening manner.
Do you think?
A little bit.
Oh, no,
I think the thing that the perfect sort of family image he sees is Brenda's family. When he's looking in and he looks in on them washing up together.
I think that's because it mirrors the images that were implanted in his head during the dancing when he was younger, because he sort of idolises his dad.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, fair enough.
Because he's the person who he's ultimately imitating, I guess. You know, the dad is charismatic, persuasive by dropping, you know, this must have slipped right off your neck with the necklace and all of that kind of stuff.
Yes.
He's used what he's learnt from his dad.
True, but as a good father figure. Well, I don't really know what his...
Well, what I mean is...
Compared to previous films, I guess, the fact that the fact he is present and does care for his son is a vast improvement on previous father figures in Spielberg movies. I guess you could say that. I'm not sure what the father's motivation in this is. I don't really quite get it. You know, why does he want his son to continue to do that? Why won't he ask? He can see that the stress of having to constantly be on the move and constantly be on the run is stressing his son out. Yeah. And he even begs him, please ask me to stop. But he won't do it. Yeah. I don't know. I don't really know why.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. And then I also think, like, let's face it, like, even if you tell, like, one lie in your life, it can put a certain amount of stress and strain on your on your mental capacity. Not only does Frank lie to everyone else, he lies to his parents as well. Yeah. So he's got no confidant to talk to.
Apart from Hanratty.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah,
I hadn't really thought about that.
Who ends up being his sort of surrogate father. Yes. Doesn't he? Yeah. How do you think his relationship's like with Brenda? This is the Amy Adams character who he gets engaged to. Why do you think he gets engaged to her? Because he's just desperate for some sort of family? Because I don't think... I don't think he really loved her. I think he liked her and a lot of affection for her. Yeah. But I think he was just trying to find some sort of family unit to start.
He was
and she was there.
Exactly. Yeah. He was quick to try to replicate the family unit, I think. Yeah, and he definitely saw something in the whole family as well. Even though Martin Sheen is actually quite, not sinister, but he's quite a sort of like, very questioning.
Yes, yeah.
To begin with, isn't he?
He's quite antagonistic, isn't he? Yeah. Like most father-in-laws.
Exactly.
I just don't buy their relationship. There is a bit of a mismatch in sort of power dynamic in their relationship, isn't there? Yeah. She is very much they're not equals. She's very much coming at it as she is more of the attending to all of his needs. Yes. And she's not fulfilling that role and therefore feels bad about it. Yeah. We've talked a little bit about the themes that we're going to get onto. Should we just talk about them now?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, to begin this, let's reveal the big secret.
You were going to... Yeah, you've been teasing this.
Which I have teased and alluded to
on 2 episodes in the space of 4 months.
Yes. So, because I feel like this is really, really useful in terms of the actual story of the movie and Steven Spielberg's life, because I think the two fit, and I think that goes some way into explaining why you said this is a contender for Spielberg's most personal movie.
Absolutely, yeah.
Steven Spielberg seems to have some kind of issue to do with parenting, and particularly father issues and feeling sort of abandoned by father figures. Mm-hmm. And strong role models. I also remember mentioning that when we watched the E.T. episode, that the mum in E.T. was very big sister-ish. Yeah. And not particularly parental or authoritative.
Yes.
Now, the secret, which apparently has only come to light in the recent few years, I saw it on a Sky documentary that I had never seen before. And the secret is that it was not Steven Spielberg's father who had an affair which caused the breakup of the Spielberg family unit.
Which is what he'd previously believed the entire time.
Yeah. And so that's why he's...
Which has influenced every single movie he's made.
Yeah. Until this one, really.
Yeah, I guess so.
And it turns out his mum was the one who had an affair with Steven Spielberg's father's best friend.
Much like in this movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Steven Spielberg's father is still alive. We've mentioned that before. Mm-hmm. And the interviewer said, so why did you decide to be the one to leave the family unit? And he said, well, I feel like my ex-wife was very fragile then, sort of as is now. And I felt like actually I was doing the thing that I thought was best. And so it all actually comes from a place of vulnerability, I would say, on Spielberg's father's part. And not what Spielberg himself thought, which was a selfish, I have my own agenda point of view. So when I found this out, having known for so many years that it was Steven Spielberg's biggest theme, father issues, it really, really sort of like surprised me.
Well, it clicks everything into place, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. He found out this information just before Catch Me If You Can, while making Catch Me If You Can?
I think so.
Was it? Because it would fit, because it seems odd that the family situation is exactly like that.
Yes.
And the fact that in real life, I think the real Frank Abagnale Jr., when his father left, he didn't see him again. And in this, they've played up, Spielberg specifically asked Jeff Nathanson, who wrote it, to play up the father figure, make sure that family dynamic is clear in the script, and give them more moments together.
Yes. It would fit.
It would definitely fit, wouldn't it?
Yeah. All I knew was it was in recent time. So, we're talking about 2003 here, so it is relatively recent.
Fair, if you were to guess, it would be during the filming of this, that's when it happened. Or just the pre-production of this. Yeah.
Can you imagine being told that information, and it feels almost like the first thing you would do is, got to put that in a movie?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, Steven!
To be fair, if it happens, I'm podcasting it straight next week.
As long as it's not while it's happening.
How was your week, Luke? Well, you're not going to believe what Dad did. It's part of his fame from the Last Crusade episode. It's got to his head.
And you're going to recreate that moment where she talks in her sleep.
Oh, I don't want to think about this. I don't like it.
Let's move on.
So, yes, this is hugely autobiographical. If you look at it like that, but also look at the fact that Steven Spielberg has been perpetuating this story of him getting into Universal Studios as a bit of a con artist. And also, a theory that I read about was that this film explores a sort of a psychological aspect called the imposter syndrome.
Right.
Don't know if you heard.
Is that sort of like compulsive lying?
Well, not an imposter syndrome. It's an imposter phenomenon. It's a sort of psychological phenomenon that a lot of people get. And I get this sometimes as well. The fact that you feel like in your job you are going to be found out at any point. Someone's going to be like, you're going to be found out and you're going to be exposed as some sort of fraud.
Yeah.
Because someone's going to come in and question, oh, actually, you've done this, or you know this, you don't know that, someone who's more qualified than you is going to come and going, you don't know what you're doing.
Yes.
And this is apparently quite a common thing.
Yeah.
That this movie, it's been sort of theorised that it could be just playing upon a lot of Spielberg's anxieties about this beforehand, that he is a bit of a fraudster. He is going to be found out at some point. He never graduated high school. He does want to constantly impress his parents. And this might be sort of explaining that a little bit.
Yeah.
Which I found quite interesting, because it all does fit. It does fit with that, yeah.
Having sort of, just personally, having directed the odd short film, etc. Because I would describe myself in day-to-day life, I'm actually quite happy to sort of be a bit of a sheep and let someone else take the lead.
Yeah.
Apart from when I feel like I'm in my zone, as in like I know it's going to be my name as having directed this thing.
Yeah.
You do get the sense that, right, now I'm acting as a leader.
Yes.
And I think people do feel that in their natural life. If you're the head of a corporation, no one was born,
in charge of that, having that much responsibility.
The CEO of McDonald's. You build your way up through a sense of what you can, in terms of leadership, what you can implant in other people's belief in you.
Unless you're Donald Trump. And you have full confidence in everything that you're doing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, but there's a psychologist who talks about this called Joan Harvey. So she says, sort of, when people perceive themselves as having risen above their roots and their station, it can evoke very deep anxieties about the separation between what they were then and what they are now.
Yeah,
and
I can see that with Steven Spielberg.
Yeah,
we mentioned before, especially around the E.T. time.
Yeah,
we talked about. Remember, we were sort of talking about Michael Jackson quite a lot around that time as well. It's interesting that the two of them are on some level both very childlike. Yeah. And then I remember mentioning that the deals that would have been done. They would have signed away on these contracts, which would have involved huge sums of money.
Yeah.
Which is a huge amount of responsibility to be responsible for delivering.
Yes. Do you mean on like Spielberg promising studios he can deliver this movie or something like that? Or
even like a tie-in with, let's say, Coca-Cola on a movie.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, like they're a big corporation with very well-paid lawyers, so if you don't deliver what you said you're going to, you're in trouble. And
this is a kid from modest roots, and you know, a very, you know, Californian normal Jewish family.
Yeah,
it is interesting, isn't it? Well, it's glad to. Well, if this is the case, it's glad to see that, you know,
even Steven Spielberg
has these anxieties, exactly. And I quite like looking at the film in terms of that. I think it's quite. I like to think that it's autobiographical. I like to think that it's come out of, you know, chronic anxieties, and, you know, because it makes him feel a bit more human, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. So
very much.
I sort of buy that theory.
Yeah.
And even actually, interestingly, after this, have you read that? Because he never graduated from college. He left college before he actually got his final graduation.
Oh, right.
He completed college after this at the age of 55.
Ah, really?
Yeah. In film and electronic arts, I think. And for his final project, he submitted Schindler's List.
Are you being serious?
Yeah, no, I'm being serious. Yeah. There you go. Done.
That's awesome. I hope his mark was, could do better.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for his Black History project as well, he did a module in Black History, he just submitted Amistad as well. I think he actually did an essay, but it's just taking the piss, isn't it?
That's brilliant. Yeah.
It's like me submitting my medical degree for my Year 9 science homework.
Yeah. Right.
I really like the nostalgia. But so with the nostalgia, something that worked, you've got to pay credit to the production designer on this, whoever that was. I can't remember who it was. The costumes and the little things that are peppered around the scenes.
Yeah.
It really makes you feel like this is 1950s, 1960s America.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
It's really good.
And there's a deceptively huge amount of locations in this movie.
Yeah. So how many were there?
Because it is so light and bouncy and moves at such a pace, you don't ever stop to question, hang on, we haven't actually kept coming back to the same location.
Yeah.
Apart from maybe the parents' apartment.
Yes.
We come back to.
But even then they move.
Yeah. According to Wikipedia, there's 147 locations.
That's mad. And I think this was shot in 52
days.
Yeah. Which is mad, isn't it?
So yeah, if we are going on
around 3 locations a day they're filming in. I mean, that's exhausting.
DiCaprio reflected, scenes that we thought would take 3 days took an afternoon.
Okay. How would Spielberg do that himself? Would he be directing everything, or would he give something to... I know second unit stuff is generally for action movies.
Yeah, it is.
Would he be delegating some scenes to some people?
When you're moving that fast, I can't imagine he actually delegated that much.
Or had the time to.
No.
Because you need to have the time to have a conversation, don't you?
Yeah. No, I get the impression that maybe, again, it might come down to that sort of personal touch that comes through in this movie.
Yeah.
It feels like he had his hands on absolutely every shot.
It's amazing because he wasn't even planning on directing this.
I know.
Was he? This was just something he picked up for, you know what, I've got a bit of a break. I've just made AI Minority Report. Just to wind down, I'll make Catch Me If You Can.
Yeah. There's been a whole bunch of other directors associated with this movie.
Yeah,
Frank Abagnale's autobiography.
Yeah.
Which was originally bought in 1980, I believe.
That's right, yeah.
One of the people associated with it was Gore Verbinski.
Gore Verbinski, the guy who did Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
David Fincher was one of them as well, which would have been...
Dark and moody.
So, would just not fit. This is like the opposite of a David Fincher movie.
Yeah.
And Lasse Hallström as well.
He directed things like What's Eating Gilbert Grape?
Did he? Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Can we talk about some of the impersonations that he makes?
Yeah.
Like the pilot. And he wants to be a pilot after he sees a pilot walking down the street and all the ladies turn because he's in a pilot's uniform. They go, ooh, just like that. And, you know, he's got women hanging off. And people are asking for pilots' autographs.
Yes.
Did that actually happen?
I mean, I wasn't there at the time.
But
I think it did.
Pilots giving out autographs.
I think people did buy more into the image.
Oh my God, he works for Ryanair. How? I just don't understand. It's just these careers, it's not why I became a doctor.
Yeah, right.
You know, the babes. Because clearly that's worked, hasn't it? Unless they're, you know, all octogenarians. To be fair, the old ladies do love me.
Yeah.
It's true.
Don't get their heart racing too much.
Yeah, that's probably
risky.
Yeah. Can we get an ECG on this lady? But generally, it's the elderly and the infirm who are the people who go, oh, he's very nice, he's very attractive.
Yeah.
So when I get to a nursing home, I'll absolutely mop up.
Let's not talk about what you have to mop up. We have to keep this light. Yeah.
But I just don't understand like how the jobs that we do now were seen as glamorous or...
Yes.
Because they are not glamorous jobs at all.
Well, I feel like back in those days...
Yeah.
We have that sort of like... I know in this country, we have the like stiff upper lip thing. It's all about sort of hiding the realities.
Sure. I guess there was more about status, wasn't there? Status isn't really a thing... Well, I guess it is, but...
It's levelled out, hasn't it, in terms of status? We definitely still have a class system in
Of course,
England,
yeah.
Because, it's just too recent to have died out.
But I remember
too much of a recent history for it to have not died out yet.
Yeah.
Thinking back to things like movie stars, though, like, nobody knew what Clark Gable did on his Sundays off. And now everyone's got Twitter accounts and you can see them in supermarkets.
Yeah. It's
It's all sort of levelled out and it feels much more like movie stars or normal people now.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, that's true. I guess, but even, for example, like when, you first get that doctor before your name, you do feel like, oh, it's very special. And then you realise that no one actually gives a shit.
Yes.
At all. And you're like, but that's not what society's told me it should happen. It's like, please give a shit.
Yeah.
Where are the babes? Nowhere. Hello, Ethel.
I'll get them off.
Okay, exactly. Yeah, trust me. When you first become a doctor, that sort of ideals of what it's going to be like are completely obliterated when you're called on the first night at 3 a.m. to do a manual evacuation on an octogenarian.
Yes, I can imagine.
It completely goes.
Yeah.
And then the lawyer as well. He does pick... I guess this all fits with the fact that he's wants to achieve the American dream. He's going through all those sort of standard jobs.
Yes. That makes me think of my sort of question that I asked you in the intro.
Mm-hmm.
So was there any bad medicine?
The problem is there's not actually that much medicine that's shown.
No, there's only one time, isn't there, where he's faced with a horrific sight of a boy's leg.
The boy's leg's been broken and he just goes, do you concur? Because that's what he watched on TV.
Yes.
I might try that, actually.
Then you concur.
You concur.
Why didn't I concur?
It is like that when you first meet a scary consultant.
You have told me before.
Yeah.
Because I, over the years have sort of said, what do you think is more important? The leadership qualities that one associates with sort of people in authority like doctors.
Yeah.
Or being better at the sort of science, theoretical, bookish side that being a doctor also encapsulates.
Yeah.
And
what did I say?
I've asked a couple of people, and nearly all of them say the people skills is much more important than the science, because the science is in black and white and you can look it up.
Yeah.
Whereas the confidence that comes through from having the people skills,
especially nowadays. Again, back in the day in the 1960s, medicine was very, very paternalistic, and what I mean by that is the fact that the doctor was the boss. And the doctor told you what was going to happen, and you smiled and agreed with that.
Yes.
And
you did not ask questions.
You did not ask questions.
Yeah.
Now, especially what I do now, so I'm an oncology doctor. Like everything it's very patient driven. Everything is very much, and in order to negotiate sometimes what the best plan of action is. It's not the same for everyone. It's very, very individualistic, and you need to get to the bottom of what's important to the patient, and that is a conversation. And which is why I think probably in modern day Britain, he could even potentially be a realistic fake doctor.
Yes.
Because he can talk. One of his Frank's major skills is being able to talk to people.
Yes.
And talk his way out of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And instill confidence in the person that he's talking to.
Absolutely, yeah. One of the best moments of him talking his way out of things, so a little segue here, which I forgot to mention, when he first gets caught by Hanratty, by Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
And how he escapes from the situation by pretending he's a member of the Secret Service.
Yes.
Amazing. I love that.
The best thing about that is the suspense of will he open the wallet?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And because you know his secret's going to be exposed.
Yeah. And
he just keeps him distracted, doesn't he?
Yeah. And what I love about the introduction scene of that is when he's going, Hanratty's coming up the hotel staircase and he's getting his gun out and he's getting his ID badge. Is Tom Hanks does this so well. He just he fumbles with his gun, looking extremely uncomfortable, like he's not used to handling a gun.
Yeah,
he can't quite get it out properly, you know, and it's not even focused on, but it's just a little fumble. And then he shows his ID to a screaming cleaning lady, but it's the wrong way round.
Yeah.
So he's just saying the flank, like, it's just little things like that, and they make the whole moment.
Yeah. So I've got a little section about, like, you know, as we talked before about, like, what makes a character sort of likable or relatable or whatever. I think we've even talked quite a bit about what makes Frank, the Leonardo DiCaprio character, sort of empathetic. You know, we can relate to some extent with, you know, his boyishness and wanting to come across as much older than he is, or like the trouble that he faced when he his parents went through a divorce, etc. And of course, as an audience, we get the sense that, like, you know, it's really cool to see someone beat the system.
Yeah.
As you get that as well, because he's such a good liar. But what I think makes Hanratty, the Tom Hanks character, sort of relatable is that he's kind of constantly undermined or made to look stupid. Yeah. He's definitely very dedicated and sort of good at his job.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it shows his clumsiness, or everyday clumsiness, I guess, of just being a human being and just not being quite as good as he should be.
A 17-year-old boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you can relate to his frustration. Like, oh, he's only 17.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's just very human, isn't it?
Yeah.
The fact that he's not smooth. He's not.
Yeah. And like the person who reveals, remember, it's like the waiter who reveals that.
Oh, Barry Allen.
Barry Allen.
So that, because that's using his pseudonym, and obviously Barry Allen is
the Flash.
The Flash, the real life name, the Flash.
Yeah, but he hadn't worked it out himself.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
and then he realizes he's a kid. Yeah. Yeah, and just like the fact that Hanratty's likable because, like, he's being portrayed as someone who's very humorless, but is still funny at the same time.
Yes, it's almost in a, dare I say it, almost like a British sense of humour.
Yes, yeah. So completely disliked by and not got by Americans.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. You're actually you're right.
Very dry, very sarcastic.
Yeah. You've been to America a few times. Have you tried that on some Americans and they think you're being extremely rude?
Not particularly. No.
Okay, I have. Just me then. Do you want? Let's talk about. So we've been pretty much praising this movie and talking a bit about its past.
Yeah.
Are there some bits that annoy you in it? Are there some bits that
don't
work?
Yes, there are a couple of little.
Should we talk about that now?
Yeah. One which
because
I have a few like little subtitles as I'm writing, and bits I didn't like, and it remained unfilled for a long time. The little section on my piece of paper. But then, right as I was writing it, came the bit which I remember being cynical of, even when I saw it at the cinema: escaping through a plane toilet.
Yep, written down. Number one.
Yeah. It broke the.
You know, that's in the book.
In Frank Abagnale's book.
It's Frank Abagnale's book. However, it has been debunked. So
I heard that he jumped a fence or something.
I read. I can't honestly. I can't. It's not like I can't name my source, but I can't remember what source it was I looked at. But so I read, because I've not read the actual book, that it is in the book that Frank Abagnale wrote that he escaped out the toilet. That book, it's important to remember that it was written with a journalist called Stan Redding, and he embellished a lot of the things.
Right.
So whether that actually happened or not, well, probably not, because and I read an article on a plane expert who talked about this scene, and it's like it's impossible for that to happen.
It seems impossible.
Yeah.
I imagine if it did happen, it feels like it would be much more like the plane landed, he asked to use the bathroom in the airport, somehow escaped from that situation.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, I just cannot.
There's no space.
And how does he know that crawling through that space would lead to where the wheels drop out? And
not to, like, where the turbines are.
Yeah.
And be sucked in, like, yeah.
Just, it's beyond the realms of credibility.
Yeah, it is a little bit, yeah. The thing that didn't work for me, that I felt sometimes, is towards the end, I thought there were some bits that were cut, which I didn't really make sense. There was some editing stuff that didn't work for me. You know, towards the end, he escapes Miami by recruiting these Pan Am stewardesses. He employs the girls that distract all the cops, and he can walk through in sunglasses unaided. And then he does this sort of like road trip around Europe with 7 beautiful stewardesses. But you don't see any of that. You just hear about it from Hanratty.
Yes.
And then suddenly he ends up in his mother's village.
Yeah.
Printing checks.
Yes,
with no real explanation. And I think there's something being left on the cutting room floor there that would have explained that situation.
Yeah, that
because
gap.
It just seems a bit implausible that they managed to track him down through very little information, and it's a bit of a hunch that he ended up in his mother's village.
Yeah.
And that they would have the correct equipment to print these checks.
Yeah.
Didn't really make sense. So that annoyed me a little bit. The other thing that I don't really know how the judicial system works in America. Whatever his sentence was, he ended up free after about 4 years. Is that right?
Yeah.
And they said, he'll be in Tom Hanks's custody.
Yeah.
But he's walking around free.
That's true.
All he has to do, I don't know how his parole or probation or whatever it's called works.
Yes.
He's got an apartment. He's clearly free, doing a day job.
Now that's the equivalent of having like a tag around your ankle, isn't it?
It's the equivalent of being released.
Yeah.
But except you get to have a job, unlike other people who's released from prison.
Yeah.
So I didn't really understand that.
Yeah.
But it happened, I guess.
Yeah, we should probably explain that at the end, making the best of a bad situation, Frank Abagnale becomes the go-to guy on check forgery. So, winning.
Yeah.
Apparently he makes millions of pounds.
Yeah, because he then ends up being like a consultant to a lot of other designing security systems to make things safer for them. And he's still alive today, I think he's living the quiet life.
Yeah.
He's made his money.
Yeah.
He's got a Spielberg movie made out of him. He's actually done, apart from a brief time in prison, he's done very well for himself.
Yeah. It's always really interesting that, and this film highlights that a bit. If you've ever watched, movies about like the drug cartels and all that stuff, and you just think, you're so clever.
Yeah.
If only you were the other side of the fence,
Yeah.
If you were on the law's side,
yeah.
You could do well for yourself.
Yeah. The other main problem I have is about female characters and their representation in this.
Right.
And we've talked a little bit about how Spielberg represents female characters, and I think we talked about it in the Temple of Doom episode with Spielberg's wife, Kate Capshaw. For this one, this is there is a stereotypical representation of what the roles of women were in the 1950s and the 1960s.
Yeah.
Before, obviously things have, like I said, levelled out these days, quite rightly so. Where other nostalgic TV shows, I'm thinking of like Mad Men, or even the one I was watching beforehand, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, where they're set in a similar period of time, the female characters in that do have some sort of empowerment. They do have, they do either break through the shackles, they do have their own story, they do go from A to B, without really having a man to show them how to do that.
Yeah.
Whereas in this is not even trying to do that at all.
No.
The women have their role in this film.
Yes.
And that is to tell the story of Frank Abagnale Jr. without really having their own role. And this is Frank's story, and that's the purpose of it.
Yes.
But I think if this was made...
They're additions to his story, aren't they? And not
exactly.
fully fledged,
and I think if
character arced.
Yeah. And I think if this movie was made these days, you'd have a much more important role and key role for some of the important women in Frank's life.
Yeah.
Rather than just being placeholders.
You'd perhaps sort of see more of the guilt from the mother, etc.
Well, there are stereotypes, but this film is just very happy to conform to them rather than challenge them.
Yeah.
And that's sort of my problem with it. The women are very much status seekers, aren't they?
Yeah. They
use the men to justify their place in the world.
Yeah.
Quick question for you. Do you know the real Frank Abagnale Jr.? Do you know how much this story he said was actually true?
60%.
It's actually more, 80% he said 80%. Was true. Which is quite a lot of crazy stuff.
For such an outrageous story, yeah.
Yeah.
Here's something I was going to mention. I feel like they usually say the theme is not usually revealed until sort of 2/3 of the way through the story when plot lines start coming together. But very early on, I actually think one of the themes is stated quite clearly, and it's not by a character that you'd expect. I think quite clearly stated by the bank manager when Frank Sr. goes in
to ask for a loan.
And he says, it's not a question of winning and losing, it's a question of risk.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that's actually... Because we care about these characters so much, we don't want to think of them as heroes and villains. Yeah. We don't want to think of Tom Hanks as the hero and DiCaprio as a villain.
Yeah.
It's more of a question of, like, how much they're prepared to risk to get what they want.
Yeah. And we were all riskier when we were, teenagers.
Yes.
And the fact that he's got youth on his side is very much the fact that he's willing to risk more because he feels he's lost everything from his family perspective.
Yeah.
You know, his parents are broken up. He runs away. You know, he is willing to risk everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or when he realised what he's put on the line later on, that's when he starts to question what he's actually done.
Yeah. Because he's constantly running away from things, isn't he?
Yeah.
That suddenly he realises he can't, in this position, he can't settle down, can he?
Mm-hmm. No, exactly.
No, he can't stop and stand still and have
he
a
can't
family.
have the American dream that he was chasing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, I don't have anything else. Should we wrap this up?
Yeah, let's wrap this up. Well, thanks, guys, for listening to us ramble on about Catch Me If You Can.
Yeah.
Which I do, I think we've convinced ourselves now that this is his most, whether intentionally or not, his most autobiographical movie.
Yeah.
And if you've just listened to this, go watch the movie again, and bearing in mind now what you know about Spielberg and his personal life, and see how it echoes.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting.
And I feel like on this occasion, I have to apologise for all modern movies are blockbusters and they're not as good as cinema history.
Yeah.
I genuinely love this movie.
Yeah.
And it's one which I think is so light of touch that it often gets forgotten.
Yes, yeah.
That it genuinely is. I'm even going to say, like, it's even better than you remember.
Yeah.
Go and watch it and just have a really good couple of hours.
Yeah, absolutely.
In that world. It's just really fun.
Yeah. I will. This is going to be one of the modern ones that I revisit more. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. Obviously, we haven't done this yet, and I don't know if we are going to, but right now, I think Catch Me If You Can, just to have a sort of wild card in there. If we were to do like a top 5 or something, I think it deserves a place in my personal top 5.
Interesting. We should do that at the end, shouldn't we?
I think we should, yeah.
And maybe compare. Maybe we could even get our guests that have done it on to compile their top 5.
Yeah, maybe.
And we'll do a comparison of what makes it in the end.
Yeah, and then if we disagree, we can wrestle.
Clothes on, Joey. What's that movie in which Oliver Reed wrestles naked with...
Oh, Women in Love.
Women in Love, that's right.
Yeah, Ken Russell.
That's right. It'll be like that.
Exactly, yeah.
So, join us next week when we'll be talking about another Tom Hanks-Spielberg collaboration, The Terminal, which I've never seen.
Really?
Never seen it. No. Just bypassed me.
I have seen it, and that's a fair assessment.
Well,
so look forward to that one.
Yeah, exactly. Tune in. So remember, please, you can always follow us on Twitter. We're at Big Boat Podcast. You can also follow us on Instagram at The Bigger Boat Podcast. Or you can email us if you have anything to say about any of the things we've discussed. Email us on
thebiggerboatpodcast@gmail.com.
And we look forward to seeing you next week.
Cool. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, bye.
Bye.